Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth edition of the K-Hub series, which is being driven by India Business and Trade, the thought leadership platform of the Trade Promotion Council of India. Today, we have with us Professor Deepankar Sinha, who is a very noted professor in the area of trade facilitation, digitalization, global logistics, international trade operations, and systems engineering. He's currently serving as the head International Trade Operations and Logistics Division, head research as well at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, Kolkata. He's also the program director for the Center for Trade Facilitation and Logistics, IIFT, which is set up by the Logistics Division of the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. He has also been assigned the role of knowledge partner for the theme Logistics for Trade under India's G20 presidency. He has worked on various very high level and critical projects across transportation, across process development, across digitalization projects, policy projects, infrastructure projects. He's undertaken a lot of capacity building assignments on international trade operations and logistics. Interestingly, he's also has a patent on AI-based response to customer queries and has filed another patent on electronic payment systems. He has five scholars have been awarded PhD degree under him, 3 research scholars pursuing PhD. He's also written a book on global supply chains and multi-modal logistics and published papers in a number of national and international journals. So today we are going to have this discussion with Dr. Deepankar Sinha on the role of trade logistics in international trade and how India is evolving in this area. And also what kind of future can we see for our logistics in the coming years. So, good evening, sir. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this session, and welcome to K-Hub, which is our podcast series on driving trade excellence, which we have started at India Business and Trade. So, sir, thank you, sir. So, to start with, I think it would be great if you could share, give a brief overview of your experience in the shipping and logistics industry, how you have seen the role of logistics management evolve over the years in facilitating international trade, as per your experience.
Thank you, Mr. Bhari, and I thank your K-Hub series as well for giving me this opportunity. And as you had rightly said, that I have an experience in the logistics sector, working for more than 20 years in the port industry. And thereafter, I am almost done with 17 years of teaching, training, and consulting in this logistics arena, including some of the other fields that you mentioned recently. And over the time when I joined the port in 1987, till now, I saw the complete switchover from a manual-based system to a fully automated in the most developed places in the world. And in our country, in India, we have seen good hybrid systems where man-machine interactions have been observed. When we talk of the manual system, we saw head loads, cargo being carried and dumped onto the ships or trucks. Starting from there, then we saw the different kinds of the cranes and the equipment that are used to, load, unload for material handling. Followed by that, we have now seen automated guided vehicles that run in the ports with no man to be seen nearby. So these are the changes that has taken place over a period of time. And in the process, we have seen many of the new equipment getting introduced and also phasing away in between, because something more new in an unprecedented fast approach, the new things have come in. Like in field of container handling, the straddle carriers, so-called, was introduced in many ports in the developed world in US and European Union, but then it was quickly to be replaced by the gantry cranes, yard gantry cranes, like rubber tired or rail mounted ones. So this has been the changes that we have seen over time in the last few years in the field of logistics management.
Right. Thank you, sir, for that overview. Uh, how integral is logistics management to the smooth functioning of international trade, and what key elements contribute to effective logistics in exports? Could you please, Mark, lay them out for us?
This is a very important question in the sense that in international business, people mostly concentrate on the overseas component, which accounts for the major freight cost and time, like from port to port by ship or from airport to airport by air. This becomes the major component of the international system. But we forget that the entire end-to-end solution is an important element to be considered, taking into account the first mile and the last mile delivery requirements. So when we plan our logistics system, we should keep in mind that there is a complete compatibility between the first mile and the last mile delivery with an in-between component of port to port leg. Now, in many cases, we have seen it all varies with the responsibility and the risk that is taken up by the seller and the buyer. Now, in many cases, the seller has the risk of transporting the goods, but not in all cases. For example, if a buyer buys a material X work, that means coming to my factory or my warehouse and taking the goods under their control. So the seller has not much thing to do, and they may pack the materials in a manner, or they may make ready the goods in manner which may at a later point of time at the last mile may face a delivery issue, because we know in many countries there may not be railways at the other end. In many countries there may not be equipment that can handle the weight and the volume that can be handled in the first mile part. So these compatibility issues have to be taken into account, and the end-to-end solution has to be designed, whether it is the responsibility of the seller under the Incoterm called direct delivery delivery duty paid, we call it DDP, or it is completely buyer's responsibility under Ex Works. So there has to be a complete synchronization of the logistics system, because the first mile and the last mile, the major important characteristic is they are fragmented. The logistics service providers are fragmented in nature, and there are many large number of transporters, agents, intermediary players have to be contacted, and a very close coordination is required among them. And there has to be a complete intensive network control. It is not about tracking and tracing of the goods while the goods move by air or by sea. That's actually very easy, because we know with the live trackers now available, where is the location of the ship, or where is the location of the aircraft, or when will the ship reach to a port. So this is quite known. But within the last mile and the first mile, then there is a requirement of intensive network control. And therefore your question that to what extent logistics management is important, it is all about the delivery. Unless the seller can deliver the goods, the conditions are not met of its sales agreement. So that is a very important thing that has to be borne in mind, the end-to-end solution.
Right. Thank you, sir, for that very logical and crisp answer. Also considering, that you are the program director for Center for Trade Facilitation and Logistics and have been working with the Government of India in this area so extensively. How do you feel is the current state of logistics in India, and what are the key strengths and challenges? Also, how is it evolved to meet the demands of a growing economy, particularly where we are looking at, achieving the $1 trillion export target? So, what do you feel in this regard? How prepared we are in the logistics space?
To answer to this question, it cannot be straight away said yes or no improvement. What I would like to mention is that there have been a lot of improvements, but they are discrete in nature. It means that there is not what's uniformity in the improvements across the entire logistics chain. For example, most of the goods that move in international trade they move by multi-modal system. That means they change from one mode of transport to another, say from road to rail, and then from rail to the ship, and from ship to again on the other country by road or by rail to the ultimate destination. Now this multimodal movement, there are 13 to 14 important dimensions to be considered. It is not about choosing the low cost mode of transport. It is not about choosing the fastest mode of transport. It is about looking into the specific 14 dimensions that I have been able to cull out over my 37 years of involvement in this industry. And these dimensions include cargo mix. What is my cargo mix in the logistics chain? When I say cargo mix, I mean that if my client requires a bag of rice to be delivered to their warehouse, say a rice is of 25 kilo bag or a 50 kilo bag, it will not mean that the 25 or the 50 kilo bag will be made ready at the source. The entire cargo can go in industrial bags of 100 kilograms or a full shipload and truckload of paddy grains. Then it can be milled in the intermediary place where it can be put in bags. Bags can be put in containers, and finally again containers will be disturbed, and then the bags would be unloaded. So there are a lot of changes in the cargo form, from the bulk, dry bulk, to bags in break bulk, from break bulk to container to again break bulk, and then the last mile delivery. So in this multimodal system, discrete improvements will not bring the right results. Because when we want to improve the port, we may have spent a lot of money, but that becomes unutilized or infructuous when the road system is not equipped to meet the flow of goods inside the port. Inside the port, maybe the port is ready to handle, say, for example, 20 to 40,000 tons a day, but my road capacity is only limited to, say, 5 to 10,000 a day. So my cargo will only arrive at a rate of 10,000 tons a day, and my port is ready for 20 to 30,000. That means almost an underutilized capacity of 20,000. So if really the improvements have to be seen, felt, and the benefits have to be provided to the end user, end customer, or the buyer and the seller, there requires a complete seamless planning of the logistics system from the first mile to the last mile. And especially, I'm not talking of the last mile, because if it is within the country, at least from the first mile to the point or from where it will cross the border, whether it is a seaport or a airport or a land port. So that is a very important aspect that is required to really realize the benefits of all the improvement projects that have been taken apart in the country, whether it is road network by NHAI, whether it is ports under Sagarmala, whether it is air system under the air cargo improvement system. They have to be completely synchronized and a seamless planning. We need a single planning body to look into all the projects and see how they impact. It cannot work in silos. At present, I find that people are working in silos. Ministry of Shipping and Ministry of Road, Ministry of Rail, and Ministry of Aviation, along with the regulatory bodies like Customs, Excise, GST, have to all work together for a really logistics system to be effective. Else, some would be enjoying for some part of the cargo, for some part of the state, for some part of the route, while others may be suffering on those accounts. That is what I can say about.
Thank you, sir, for that very comprehensive response on the state of logistics. So in this case, how do you feel the prospects of the national logistics policy which was launched? Is it able to cover those bases effectively? And any suggestions you would have for that?
Yeah. See, during the preparation of national logistics policy, I was also involved in many of the interactions, and I feel the policy has taken into account the major dimensions of the logistics, but knitting together all the dimensions, who is going to do that? That is an issue. Policy is all about the intentions covering all the dimensions of a particular subject matter. That has been well laid down, right? It includes all kinds of elements, whether it is warehousing, whether it is different modes of transport, rail, road, water, air, pipelines, or whether it is packaging and metal handling industry, and whether it is the regulatory bodies. But knitting them together, for example, one of the cargo grown in a cold place like Simla or say Kashmir, may not need any temperature controlled truck or a carrier, because the temperature there is good, suitable enough. That is why that particular fruit or vegetable has been grown there, apples and nuts and so forth. But the truck coming to Delhi, the temperature would increase by 20 to 25 degrees centigrade, and in the process the sudden exposure of the perishable goods like apples or any such fruits, plums, they may get spoiled, and the market shelf life may decrease. So the cold chain has to be maintained. Cold chain does not mean that I have to keep everything cold in Kashmir because it's already cold there. But it means that my temperature regulations should be such that all throughout, from the first to the last mile delivery, my temperature, humidity, pressure, and all other risk factors are taken care, including air circulation. So that is where it is important that how the national logistics is embedded into the planning process. So that requires an important thought process. And again, I would stress that there needs to be a single planning body which may be compartmentalized according to some specialist areas, or experts may be drawn. So to have a complete 360-degree approach for any logistics planning to be put in place.
Right. Thank you, sir. With the advent of these new technologies, digitization, IoT, AI, blockchain, how are they going to affect the efficiency, transparency of logistics in India, and also affect trade in the future? And what can we expect in the coming years as regard to the role of these technologies?
It has been well proven through different studies and experiments that these technologies are going to really help us in enhancing the transparency of the supply chain and having a better control. When we say control, have a proactive control. There are new concepts like digital twin, wherein you get on real-time information and use them to simulate what is likely to happen in the future. So all these things have been proven, has been demonstrated, prototypes have been developed, but implementation is not happening in the way we think, because it requires a community of all the players who are involved in logistics. For example, starting from the seller to the transport operators, to the warehousing agencies, to the packaging agencies, to the regulatory bodies, to the agencies who are taking regulatory clearances, to the inland container depots, air freight stations. So there has to be a complete, agreement between these stakeholders that they would go by the protocol laid down in the blockchain, okay, or similar technology. Now, some may agree to come into the fold, some may not agree. If one player does not agree, then the entire chain is broken, right? So whatever information is shared by a blockchain technology, which has the capacity to be most resilient, that you cannot change the information easily. Now the whole thing gets disturbed moment a particular entity or node does not like to join the consortium or the node which forms the chain. It is within the country things have been possible, like we have port community system, we have the ice gate, though again they are to very great extent silos, but still there has been proven in the previous attempts that people can be brought together, and government play a very important role to bring them together under this fold. But international trade is cross-border, And cross-border would require that you have a complete agreement with the government and the private players to talk to each other. That means government of country A and government of country B, and the private players of country A and private players of country B are all in sync with the protocol and the regulations that has been laid down to follow that the information and the documents will be transferred, electronically. There has been so many attempts to make bill of lading electronic, but only to the extent of 1% out of 1 million or so bill of lading being issued every year is electronic. Why so? If people in India are not coming forward, why not in the other parts of the world? A recent study that we made while we were professing the idea of logistics for trade under the G20, we saw that overall the cross-border digital movement of information is very poor, very less. And it is to the extent of 30 to 40% in the developed countries, and that too on a few documents like country of origin certificate and the inspection certificate, and some few regulatory where the governments have agreed to exchange the documents. But hardly there are government and non-government players, private players, coming together to agree upon exchange of these documents. That is why the government of India under the 2023 presidency laid down the high-level principles. The 10 high-level principles were laid down, and it was first to be adopted in the Jaipur call for action. And I was the part of it as a knowledge partner, and I felt happy that we could make. Now, this has to be substantiated beyond the high-level principles to see what technology, what protocol, and what methods should be adopted so that the principles can be implemented. And because one of the principles says that the system should be interoperable and neutral. It should not create a digital divide between a rich and the poor country. And in order to do that, we have to identify the technology, the protocols, and the method which will satisfy all the 10 principles, which includes interoperability, which includes neutrality, which includes trust, privacy, security, and so on.
Right, right. That's pretty interesting. Sir, regarding the concept of sustainability, which is a buzzword being heard across business and trade, how is the logistics sector planning to address its environmental concerns? And what role do sustainability practices play in the shaping the future of this industry?
Well, sustainability is the buzzword now, and all developed countries have very, interestingly introduced something called the carbon tax or so. So sometimes I wonder whether it is a way to make revenue or whether it is really the way to curtail the carbon emission, carbon footprint, energy consumption, and reduction of the waste. Because if there is a tax and everyone is not, and no one has done anything to be sustainable, everyone pays the tax, then it gets nullified so far as competitiveness is concerned. Right? So if I know that carbon tax is 10% of my consignment value and all suppliers are not meeting the requirements, so all of them pay 10%. So I'm not worried because I will inbuild that tax component into my pricing and it will not affect my price competitiveness because everyone is paying for that. So that is one part of the story. But the real part of the story is like we see the continuous, assault by the cyclones and the earthquakes and the pandemics which are arising out of this climate change is really very worrying. The number of cyclones that we see nowadays in a year, when we used to be young, at least in the early 70s, not to be much. Why is it so? It is a clear indication that climate has been disturbed and not something has to be done to control it. So therefore, in this context, I'll say that, okay, we need to have some penalty measures, but penalization is not the way to ensure that it is implemented. The way is to ensure that give benefits, that if my goods cross a port or a route or a transport carrier where my total carbon, water, energy, and waste footprints are less, then I am awarded for it. Then people will always look for the places from where they can, the logistics decision will change from low cost, low time routes to the sustainable routes, because there is something to gain out of it. And in the process, there would be a very serious implication. Some ports will be marked red because they are highly polluting and carbon emitting ports. Some will be marked orange, some would be marked yellow, some would be marked blue, some would be green. So red ports are going to die out if these policies come up. So there has to be a comprehensive upliftment of all the infrastructures together up to a certain level. That means everyone should come beyond red, at least orange or yellow, and then start competing with each other. Now you can do whatever you want, but beyond this, you are not going to get this benefit. And that should not be taken as a subsidy. So I do not know whether WTO and similar bodies will consider such benefits to be given through a sustainable route as a subsidy or not. Else it will again have a boomerang effect. People will not go by that, and countries will be hesitant to put forward such policies. So maybe that can be one way to ensure that really sustainability happen. There are many technologies that has been innovated and invented, like the hydrogen fuel, the green fuel. The use of solar has been quite for some time, right? And the electric vehicles are also in place. So there has to be an optimization, because no particular renewable source of energy can meet all the requirement. So the idea is to reduce the non-renewable sources of energy and non-biodegradable inputs, but it cannot be zero. At least I don't see net zero can happen, but it cannot be zero use. So that planning has to be done.
That's a pretty interesting concept, sir, of looking at ports and how they are, adhering to these standards of environment. Sir, just to conclude, I would like to request an overview from you on what trends or developments do you foresee shaping the future of logistics in India now, and how they will affect the overall landscape of international trade. What would be your views on that?
Since sir, at present, ports, so far sustainability is concerned, they have ensured some use of solar power or so. Not much has been done beyond that. But really, if someone is interested in doing the sustainable operations, they have to look into various factors. Like if a ship comes to a port, it should not come with partial loaded goods, because then the emission per ton of goods loaded is always high. So we have to have a full shipload cargo. Now someone may argue that if your port does not permit a full shipload cargo, so you'll have to come partial shipload. I agree, no issues on that. But am I encouraging the ships to come with greater load and of the right size that comes to my port? A 1 lakh ton carrier carrying 40,000 tons and entering my port is always against the theories of sustainability. Instead, if a 40,000 carrier comes with 40,000 tons of goods, then I can say that yes, the emission levels per ton is less. How long? Till green fuels like hydrogen fuel or something in the others are used. So this has to be looked into. Ports have to ensure that their pricing mechanism should be such that their wharfage, their berth hire charges, their ship entry charges or port dues, we call it, should be in proportionate to the load capacity ratio, so that ships are encouraged to come with full load. And that will mean that big ships may not come, no worry, but smaller ships fully loaded are always encouraged to come, because it is said that the cost of shipping reduces when the quantum per shipment goes up. But on the other hand, if they come partially loaded, then the emission per ton goes up. Similarly, when the ships enter a port, they don't operate of their own. Why? Because while entering, they have a narrow channel to enter. Why there is a narrow channel? Because the ports, if they have a wide channel to connect with the sea, then the disturbance of the sea will also disturb the port water and the operations will become difficult. So always there is a narrow channel through which the ship passes. And in the narrow channel, since maneuverability is an issue, and we know that ships don't have brakes, so they don't pilot of them. There are tugboats that pull them. And tugboats also have an emission level. Now, whether we can see that part of these piloting programs can be replaced with automated radar-based vessel traffic management system, or if the tugboats can be used, which are using, green fuel or electrically operated with batteries or similar kind of technologies, so that at least within the port system, the emissions are lowered. Secondly, the productivity. Mostly Indian ports, they sometimes enjoy being less efficient. How come? Say a ship stays in the port and pays for number of days the ship stays in a port. Now the point is, how long will the ship stay in the port? It's like a person staying in a hotel. Now I am staying in a hotel, I am paying the room rent. That I don't want to stay long, I leave the room and I don't pay. But here, the ship cannot leave of their choice, because they will leave only after the loading unloading is complete. And if a port is less efficient, so the stay will increase. And if the stay increases, then they will pay more berth hire charges to the ports. And in turn, port will also gain. So being efficient, berth hire charges go up. Why can't the port say that we will ensure a productivity level of X tons per hour or X moves per hour? And beyond that, if we are not able to do, we will not charge anything on berth hire charges. Instead, we will compensate for your longer stay. Now, this is a very bold step to be taken, and productivity is also very important to make port sustainable, so that the stay at berth gets lowered. And solar panels or solar electricity is not the only way to curtail energy consumption, because when a ship stays in the port, they run generators. They have their power backup, and they are also emitting in nature. So can the ship use a shore power? In many ports, they are allowed. Yes. But is the shore power a green power? So that way you have to decide and think. Maybe shore power is an electrically driven power, has a better sustainability than the diesel or the fuel that is generated by the ship's generator. But then again, if you really want to cut down on the emission levels, even the shore power needs to be, green power, renewable sources of energy. So that is how I feel that sustainability can be implemented, by looking into the pricing system, by looking into the productivity, by using of green power, and especially when the ships are stationed, they consume power to run their own galley and kitchen and working on board the ship. They draw shore power, which is also green in nature. So as I said earlier, the chain has to be studied and not a particular element in isolation or in silo. That is what I'm.
Thank you, sir, for that overview. I'm just tempted to ask, whether India can aspire to be because Singapore is considered the busiest transshipment hub, and India obviously is currently in the process of major upgradation. But is that something India can aspire to become a transshipment hub in its own right in the coming years?
Why not? It is all about the price and the cost competitiveness. In say, if India can offer a productivity level wherein the stay time of the ship reduces, and India can offer infrastructure wherein the ships of the right size can get accommodated. For example, the largest of the ship, ultra large container carrier, and say ports like planned at Nicobar Island, or say in Kerala they have a new port coming up. So if the shipping lines feel attracted, for three reasons. That is, first of all, they are willing to come to the port because port is offering them a very high level infrastructure wherein the stay time is less and the regulatory processes are minimal. So they are willing. Now, second is their capacity to pay. Capacity, that means the cost of the port charges or the freight that they would pay to the port and the importer exporter's cost. Because if the importer exporter finds it costlier, even if the ship charges are less at the port, they may not bring the cargo here. If they don't bring the cargo here, the ships won't be ready to come here. So there has to be demand for the cargo. And larger the ship you are trying to call, we have to understand that we need full shipload cargo demand. Else, shipping lines will not find it, lucrative to profitable to come to that particular port. So there has to be high demand for the cargo, and there has to be the willingness for the ships to come in terms because they have been offered a better infrastructure facility, and then everyone should have the capacity because it is said get at the level of services that you provide value addition, you are likely to charge more. Many a times if your cargo is not high valued cargo, then people are not ready to pay for that. They will say, okay, let it go by export, wait there for 2 days. I don't mind because these 2 days will increase my cost by $50. But instead, if I want to reduce my 2 days, my cost is $100 because I have to pay an additional express charges or high value added charges. And my commodity is a low cost commodity because, any goods, because goods inside the container also matters, whether it is high valued goods or a low valued goods. So that is the consideration. With these considerations, yes, I agree. Indian ports can always bring this challenge by providing the right service to all the stakeholders, importers, exporters, logistics agencies, and the shipping lines. That is what I can say.
Right, right. I think that finishes a very, very fascinating interaction, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And we've covered a very comprehensive range of issues from the evolution in the sector to the role of technology. We've talked about, sustainability and also about, what the future holds for the Indian logistics space, what kind of challenges we need to address, particularly the, holistic management and looking at things not in silos, but looking at how they connect to each other. And I think it was wonderful speaking to you, sir, after such a long time. And we hope to, keep interacting in the future. Thank you so much, sir, for giving the time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a good day.
Same to you. Thank you.